when we are in this feeling of inescapability, that everywhere we turn, we feel like we cannot get out of the difficult emotional experience, mental experience we are having. That is often a clue that we are in a certain part of ourselves or a certain constellation of parts of ourselves that are deeply committed to seeing things a certain way. And when we have a life circumstance that reinforces that difficult experience, it can be even more challenging to feel like you could get out of the grip of this difficult emotional and mental state. And I'm here to tell you that you're not alone. That when life feels like it's crashing down on you, whether it's with illnesses or catastrophes or relationship problems or financial issues or a run of different life issues that can just plague us as human beings. And when we're having these difficult inner experiences on top of that, we're often challenged in such a way that we feel trapped. And I'm going to challenge the way that we deal with these situations because I challenge myself to deal with them differently. Just yesterday, I was having this exact feeling. In my life, there are certain circumstances which sometimes feel inescapable. And I've had to work really hard to keep overcoming that limited mindset because that limited mindset comes from certain parts of me. And those parts of me are parts of me that are not willing to see things in a different light. And willingness is a huge part of change. Willingness is a huge part of growth. If we're not willing to grow, it doesn't happen. So I often have to find the parts of me and go deep into my soul and access the willingness from those parts, from that soul, from my soul. And actually strive to release myself from the difficult emotional experience. Let me tell you more tangibly what I mean by that. Many of our negative emotional experiences are designed in such a way that they just keep looping in on themselves. And you might notice that when certain people are depressed, if you give them suggestions of how not to be depressed, like, hey, maybe go for a run, or maybe take a cold plunge, or maybe do some affirmations, or maybe go to therapy, often the depression is so strong that they don't even want to do those things because the depressed part of them has got them, has grabbed that person's psyche. When we realize that the psyche is made up of many different parts, it's easier to understand how we can be subjected to different experiences and different circumstances as we go through life. And part of taking back our life and our agency means redistributing the energy inside of ourselves towards the parts of us that are able to be functional. So there are many things in my life that I can't control. What I can control is my own attitude. What I can control is how I deal with my experiences. And I will tell you, as a matter of fact, that we have way more ability to impact our experience than we often give ourselves credit for. If we are not feeling well psychologically, we can change that. Doesn't mean we have control over the circumstances in our lives to 100% extent. Doesn't mean that we have control over everything going on in our body, whether it's physical illness or whatever it may be. What we have control over is this layer of our psyche that is responsible for how we interact with the world and with ourselves as agents. And when we tap into this source of higher agency, we are able to find release from the shackles which we have imposed upon ourselves. And that requires a tremendous amount of focus and a tremendous amount of willpower and also surrender and willingness to allow new experiences to come in, to not be bound to a certain mindset, to a certain subpersonality, to a certain emotion, to be flexible, to be willing to change and to grow and become. And so I'm here to tell you today that we have way more capacity than we give ourselves credit for. No matter how sick we are, no matter how lonely we feel, no matter how damning the external world in its way that it feels like it's impinging upon us can be, we have the ability to interact as agents and make a creative choice. That's why our business, founded in 1973, Center for Creative Choice, has its name. Because life is what it is, and it's what we do with it that matters. And our ability to respond is much more flexible than we often perceive. So I invite you to do an experiment. If you're in a negative emotion, in a mindset that feels dysfunctional, that feels like a trap, that feels claustrophobic, that feels incredibly difficult, see if you can shift in to a different attitude by letting go of the attachment to the negative experience and being willing to overcome it, to transcend it, to find a deeper source of love and meaning. Just that willingness, followed by some focus, is an incredible step. Visualization can also help, because visualization allows us to access the imaginary focal points in our psyche, which are tapped into our nervous system and in our brains in deep ways. And as we envision new ways of being, whether it's shimmering, loving light, or a quiet lake, or love and softness and golden radiance spreading throughout the body, we are actually deep in our nervous system, deep in our cellular infrastructure in such a way that changes things on a molecular basis, on a neurochemical basis. So we have these flexible boundaries that we can push, that are permeable, that can shift. And operating within that mindset is what it really means to be the maximal agent.